Welcome back to the news today. This is a one-on-one. Ukraine has been in the spotlight for some time with a drawn-out conflict with separatists in the east, though it's faded from headlines recently. Even in the last 24 hours, 5 Ukrainian soldiers were killed and another 12 wounded in clashes. Still seeking an end to the conflict, another round of talks is set for Minsk. So where does Ukraine stand today? Joining me tonight is Ukrainian Member of Parliament and head of the Culture Commission, Mykola Knyazhitskiy. Thank you very, very much for coming, Mr. Knyazhitskiy.
Thank you.
Mr. Knyazhitskiy, try to explain to us, although it's not in the headlines, although we're not seeing Ukraine, let's say, maybe crying its suffer out right now, what is happening on the ground?
It's war. It's war between. It's really war between Ukraine and Russia because after our revolution, we changed our power, our government. Previous government was supported by Russia. New government and the Ukrainian people want to be part of European society, of European Union, and it's big conflict between Ukraine and Russia because, of course, Russian government Putin, she thinks that Ukraine can to stay example for Russia, and it can started to change in Russia, you know, and it's big news for Putin. It's why they started war against Ukraine.
Why do you think that it's let's say coming off the headlines? Why do you think it was really a big deal like 6 months ago, and now it seems that okay, there is a conflict in Ukraine and Russia, and eventually they will, let's say, manage the things.
First of all, it's because each day 5 or 10 people killed Ukrainian soldiers or Ukrainian volunteers or people who live in small country in Ukraine, you know, killed by Russian weapons or Russian tanks each day. And when it's one day in year, it's news. When each day, it's usually, you know. And of course, big Russian propaganda, Russia used big propaganda against Ukraine. They spend many money for Russia today, for different propaganda channel, for work with government of European country. Of course, we are smaller and we are a young country, and we don't have money from oil like Russia, and difficult for us situation.
Because you're, like you said, you're a smaller country, you're a young country. Do you think that you have a chance against Russia?
I think that we have a chance because we feel big support from United States, from European society, and from Israel too. For example, I am member of parliamentary group cooperation between Ukraine and Israel, and we receive many aids, humanitarian aid from Israel, you know, and from other countries too. Because it's war not between Russia and Ukraine. It's war between East values and Western values, and we want to be part of this Western values. I think that of course in future we have a future with our values, with humanitarian values.
How do you feel that, because there was a certain point, and I think that, let's say, the balance of power is that always the world is leaning more towards the weaker part, like you said, Ukraine in this, let's say, in this specific case is the weaker side. How do you think you've changed in this conflict?
Weaker, what is weaker?
Weaker is not strong, but weak.
Ah, okay.
The opposite of strong.
I think that Russia plan and Russia think that big part population of Ukraine supported Russians. But Ukrainians support Ukrainian government, you know. It's why this war in Ukraine is like Cold War. And Russia wants to conserve situation like this. And of course, it's humanitarian problem, especially for population in Donetsk and Lugansk, because I think like 2 million people don't have land in your house. They go to other country, to Ukraine, to other part of Ukraine. Of course, it's humanitarian catastrophe, and this is a big issue.
You know, there is no doubt that some people in Ukraine or some communities in Ukraine see themselves as part of Russia, see themselves as see Russia annexing them and being part of Russia. Other people, the Ukrainian people who are not seeing themselves as part of Russia, are they becoming more patriotic to their country? Or you're seeing that they lost hope?
We don't have a problem with population in Ukraine. You know, it's also part of Russian propaganda, because, for example, in previous elections in Ukraine, all pro-Russian party received like 2% of voters. People in Donetsk and Lugansk also want to live in Ukraine, but if you see Russian tanks and Russian military equipment and Russian soldiers in your home, of course people don't ready to be against that. But only Russian soldiers, like in Crimea. In Crimea, it's true. Part population of Crimea want to be part of Russia, but it was only in Crimea. It don't was in Lugansk and Donetsk.
Yeah, you know, looking at the situation and looking maybe. In one way or another, the will of Ukraine to be part of Europe, to be part of the bigger world, of NATO. Do you see this happening in this current situation?
It's difficult, but it's happening. You know, it was, for example, in Finland many years ago. Of course, Russia pressured Finland, but Finland can create a good European country with European values. And after that, they stay part in Europe. You know, or we have example of Israel. Israel create a country with European values in these difficult regions. And now Israel is a good relationship with United States, with European country. It's like part of this world. We also want to be part of this world, not only in paper. We don't tomorrow sign agreement with NATO. I won't, but I think it's impossible in this situation. But we want to be part of this civilization world, not part of corruption and authoritarian Russia.
And seeing the way that Russia taking maybe more power and taking a bigger role in what is happening in the Middle East, the relief of sanctions from Russia, maybe Russia also involved with what is happening with Iran, this is not making you even more worried about your situation?
Of course, now they want to support Iran, and Russian all times they support different terrorists in Middle East or different group in Middle East and different regime like Iran in Middle East. But I think that price for oil now it's not very high. It's why Russian economic is not strong. I think they told about this power, but in really they have problem inside Russia with economic.
And Ukraine doesn't have problem economically, doesn't have humanitarian problem?
Yes, but Ukraine don't have oil. You know, we can change our economic, because our economic it's only our people and only our hand. It's not our oil or our military equipment or something other that Russia buying. Now we have a war against corruption. We started reform in our government, and I hope that now Ukraine, in a way, it was Poland like 20 years ago, and we can change our country because we started this change. Russians don't start this change now.
Yes. Thank you very, very much for coming to our studio and explaining to us a little bit more about the current situation in Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you very much
for coming. And thank you, our viewers, for being with us tonight. Tomorrow we will be here at the same time, same place from the Jaffa Port, Israel. Have a great day.